This is the Amazfit Active 2. I guess to be more specific, this is the Amazfit Active 2 Premium Edition. This watch can look both elegant and sporty and does a pretty darn good job living in the casual smartwatch world and performing in the active sports world. It delivers some pretty high-end features, is built with some pretty decent materials, and it comes in at $99 US for the standard version and just $129 US for the premium edition. You curious? Let's jump in. Okay, the premium version of this watch was hard to find for a quick minute, so I just recently got my hands on one. Here is the unboxing, and you can expect to have pretty much the same exact experience with both of the versions, with the exception that you get two watch bands with the premium edition. You get both a black leather strap as well as an orange silicone strap, whereas with the standard you get a single black silicone strap. You also get a charging puck that magnetizes to the back to align charging pins and takes a USB-C cable. Aside from that, you get some manuals as well if you want to read something before bed, I guess. Okay, let's take a closer look at the hardware here because like other Amazfit devices, this watch punches a bit above its weight class. The bezel and basically top half of the body is made of stainless steel, while the bottom portion is made of polymer. The display itself is 1.32 inches AMOLED, 466 by 466 pixels, and 2000 nits brightness, so it gets plenty bright. Having not worn a watch at 1.3 inches in a while, I have to say it's somewhat refreshing to have a watch that really appears to look like a watch and not a tank on the wrist. And here's how it looks on my roughly 7.25 inch circumference wrist. So the lens on the Active 2 Premium Edition is sapphire glass, which is the big benefit of that premium upgrade. Sapphire is normally thought to only come in the highest end watches, so to get an extra watch strap and a sapphire lens for $30 is an unbelievably good deal. Being as the lens is raised up a bit above the bezel, I would say spring for that premium version if it's available, and you could hopefully avoid as many scratches as possible. The sensor on this watch is what Amazfit calls the BioTracker 6.0, which is the same sensor used in their higher end T-Rex 3 outdoor watch. And I reviewed that a little while ago on the channel, so you could see some more of that if you'd like. It has tested very well in comparison to other high-end watches, and we're going to cover sensor performance in just a little bit, and let's just say you don't want to miss that part of the video. The battery comes in at 270 milliamp hours and is rated for 10 days with race to wake and 5 days with always on display. Now I will say I never got it to 5 days with always on display being used. I may use the GPS a little more than some. I'm out for about an hour every day, maybe a little bit longer, doing some walks on top of that. But I think I got to about 4 days, maybe a few hours past 4 days before the watch died. It never did get to 5. It does charge up pretty quickly though, so that shouldn't be much of an issue as long as you keep an eye on the battery life. The straps for the Active 2 are 20 millimeters, so that lends itself to this svelte and somewhat normal watch vibe you get from the Active 2. That doesn't have the ginormous sports watch vibe to it, but it can still hang with those watches, so we'll get to that in a minute. And speaking of svelte, the watch weighs in at a barely there 43 grams with the silicone strap. Overall, I think the build quality is really solid at this price point. The only nitpick I will offer is that the lug holes appear to just be constructed of polymer like the rest of that portion of the body. And my own experience, I've had lugs crack on previous watches, and I wish they had metal inserts in there to make the area stronger. That was kind of the point of failure. But anyways, having said that, I haven't read any reports of Amazfit watches failing in that area, so it's probably just my own biases coloring my opinion there. Okay, let's talk about design next. I really like this design as something that works so effortlessly as a nice dress watch, but still performs as a sports watch. It can do something that so many sports watches can't: fit under a shirt cuff. When I am dressing things up a bit, I like to pair my Active 2 with my new Groove Ring Tungsten. After so many years of marriage, my original wedding band no longer fits, and I think I finally found my replacement band. This ring is premium tungsten carbide with black tone finish, and there is a 24 karat gold and platinum finish available as well. The beveled edges not only look nice, but they make it more comfortable in the hand as well. And speaking of comfort, you know it wouldn't be a groove ring without the breathable channels that prevent you from getting swamp finger or skin irritation. It's built tough with a PVD coating, so I don't have to worry about scratches during any day-to-day activities. And if something does happen to it, it's backed by Groove's 94-year no BS guarantee. If I know I'm going to be particularly active that day, I'm just going to swap over to my Zeus Edge ring that comes complimentary with every Groove ring tungsten. The OG brand for silicone rings is better than ever with the Zeus Edge. You really can't go wrong with this 1-2 combo no matter what the occasion calls for. So if you're tired of cheap rings that can't keep up with your lifestyle, then check the link in the description to grab a Groovelife Tungsten Ring. It'll be the last ring you'll ever need. Now, I do wish that the bezel was even the slightest bit raised to take the occasional bump against the door frame, but so far in a few weeks of use, I haven't noticed a single scratch either, so I guess it's working out. One design choice I don't like, and again, this is just me here, the silicone straps with the inner tucking of the long end, similar to the Apple Watch style. It can kind of be a pain to put it on with that appropriate level of tightness, and the extra portion kind of gets tucked in and makes it a little bit tighter, and that extra portion also kind of moves around too much. There's no little band holding it steady, but these are standard watch pins, so any 20mm strap will fit in there. Hey, really quick, if you're enjoying this video and find the content useful, please consider supporting a small channel like mine with a thumbs up, and consider subscribing if you like this type of content. Those two things take a moment out of your day and they mean the world to me. So thank you so much for your support and for watching. Back to it. Okay, let's talk about the UI next. If you've used past Amazfit watches, you know a bit of what to expect from the UI here. By default, the upper right button gets you to an app screen that is very reminiscent of a certain fruity OS. The bottom button opens your activity list, of which there are more than 160 activities. You can also long press each of those buttons and program what you would like the long press to control, which is a nice touch. Speaking of touch, you can swipe down for your control center where you can control things like brightness, do not disturb, sleep mode, and more. You can swipe up for your notifications, and from there you can swipe over for your quick actions. This is where you can reply, dismiss, or whatever else. For example, you can type out your replies, you can send emojis, or you can dictate a response. Swiping from left to right, you access your widget carousel with widgets such as training readiness, heart rate, as well as your quick access apps page. If you palm the screen at any time, you'll turn it off or enable the always on display if you have that setting enabled. If you hold down on your screen, you're going to access the variety of watch faces you have installed on the watch, or if you tap on any complication, you'll open that widget and see more detail. Okay, I think it's appropriate to touch on some of the features of the Active 2. There are some notable features on this watch that you just don't find on watches at this price point. One of them is offline maps. That's right, you could download maps onto your $100 sports watch. The storage is limited, so don't expect to get an entire continent on there, but I got my entire state on there, and although it took a while, about I'd say 15 minutes to download everything, it's all there. You could also import track files like GPX files to the Zepp app and then send those to the device to use for navigation. So it's not really a super smooth or easy process, but again, it's doable on a $100 watch. Bluetooth calls. Yep, you can take and make calls from your watch as long as your phone is nearby. And since you can do that, you can of course dictate replies to messaging notifications. You can also use their Zepp Flow AI to have voice activated control of your watch, as well as talk to it like a normal chatbot. Zepp Flow is powered by OpenAI. You know those guys that made ChatGPT? Yep, built into the watch. Finally, Amazfit is also the official partner of Hyrox, so there's a dedicated activity mode just for Hyrox, which is pretty cool. Although it should be noted there is no actual multi-sport mode on this watch, so if you're a triathlete looking to train for triathlons, it's probably not the best fit. But if you know anything about Hyrox, there's like a million stations and running in between, and that's all programmed in, but hey, it is what it is. It's pretty cool to have Hyrox built in. And speaking of activities, let's take a quick look at the performance of the sensors on this watch for running and lifting. Okay, so this run here, this is an interval workout, and I'm wearing the Amazfit 2 on one wrist and the Coros Pace Pro on the other. You can see we're warming up here and then hitting intervals, and overall, this looks like they're both tracking extremely similarly. If anything, there's a few little erratic points here maybe where the Pace Pro is slightly off and the Amazfit seems like it's hitting things in a more logical manner. Like I wouldn't think during an interval my heart rate drops like that. So overall, these look extremely similar. You can see with the averages here, we've got 162 and a quarter for the Pace Pro and 161 and basically 162 for the Active 2. So very similar here. Moving along to cadence, I mean, these look like they're in lockstep here. We're going up and down. You could see kind of like the cadence going up and then dropping as the interval goes down. And I mean, it looks very similar. If anything, I would say most of the time it looks honestly kind of like the Pace Pro is lagging slightly behind the Active 2. But overall, they look extremely similar again. And if you look at the averages, I mean, that's, you can't get any more similar than that, 85.6 and 85.66. Taking a look at GPS here, we can see, I mean, they're pretty much just matched right up there, right? And I will say that the Active 2 does not have dual GPS, but I'm running in a pretty easy environment. This is not a super challenging environment where you know, there's lots of tree cover, tall buildings, or anything like that. So keep that in mind. The lack of dual band GPS could become more of a factor in a more challenging environment. All right, looking at the heart rate here. Now this is just basically a steady run. I threw in a few little strides at the end here, and on the Pace Pro, I'm using the Pod 2, and I'm using an arm heart rate strap. I'm using their optical sensor, the arm-based one. This time, Coros Pace Pro is purple, Active 2 is blue. So just keep that in mind here. And what I'll say is, again, we're tracking extremely similarly. So now this isn't even wrist-based versus wrist-based heart rate. Now we're looking at two optical heart rate sensors, but one being arm-based. And man, like if I look at the intervals here at the end, right, this is the only like challenging part here. The Coros Pace Pro is behind the Active 2. I mean, could that be right? The changes seem to be favoring the Active 2 responding before the Pace Pro. Like this is the Active 2, this is the Pace Pro, and it seems like, I mean, that's pretty wild. Okay, taking a look at cadence here, and again, this is a steady state run. This looks about as steady as it gets. You can see this isn't cadence lock. You know, you could see there's little variations and whatnot, so we're not suffering cadence lock. I'm running in a flat area and a steady pace. Like it should be pretty consistent, right? And again, like the end is kind of where things could get a little dicey because I threw in those strides at the end. But if you take a look, I mean, this is like a perfect reading here, as far as matching with. Again, I'm using a foot pod here, so the cadence reading should be extremely accurate for the Pace Pro, and the Active 2 is right there with it. And again, I'll show the GPS, but it's going to be about the same. You know, we're dealing with the same GPS units from the last run. It's like the same. There's no craziness. Like that's a little bit of wandering, I'd say. You know, like right here, that's a bit off. I did have the watch on my right wrist, you know, and the Coros on my left, but still that did look like a little bit of wandering here. That's about what you expect when it's on opposite wrists, but overall, I mean, this is pretty much just locked in. Okay, so this is our final boss. It always is. This is a strength workout, and this is using a Garmin HRM Pro Plus chest-based ECG heart rate strap against the Active 2. So this is where, you know, decent optical heart rate sensors come to die. There's just almost no way that during a strength activity, when you're gripping a lot, when your heart rate is spiking up, dropping down pretty rapidly, it's extremely hard for optical to perform well here. But let's take a look. We have our Active 2 in blue, the Garmin in purple, and you can see here about the best you're going to get is something like this, where you can see the Active 2 gets about the same numbers, but they're just, you know, like maybe 10, 20 seconds delayed. That's about the best you're going to get, but about this is what you're going to expect, right? It never quite gets that high, and then things are coming down already. It's not great here. I've seen worse performances. I mean, this is not good here, right? With all these spikes here, and it's reading none of that. So yeah, again, this is the toughest test. Almost no optical wrist-based heart rate sensor will do well here, but it is what it is. Okay, I've got to say, I'm honestly blown away at how good the Active 2 performed on the wrist. It did fall slightly short on strength workouts, but other watches have performed a hell of a lot worse at a hell of a higher price. I have to say, I do still think that out of all the watches I've tested, I like the Amazfit approach to strength training the most, as you can adjust the reps and weight during the entire rest period. I think that's great. Okay, let's touch on the mobile app next, and I won't get into the app too much here as I covered it more in my TRX3 review, so you could check that out if you want a more in-depth coverage, but it's pretty well designed, it's simple to navigate. You'll often find that Amazfit is generous with their scoring and feedback. So for example, your training readiness and sleep scores will often be quite high, but if you understand that, like say a 75 score in Amazfit basically translates to like a 35 for Garmin, then you're kind of getting the picture. Now, if you look in your workout tab, you could dive into some workout statistics here, as well as set up a Zepp Coach workout plan. The Aura section is all about sleep and wellness, breathing exercises, and that sort of thing. The device section actually has a lot of settings for your watch, and it's also where you could download maps, download apps, and download watch faces. So there's a lot going on there. Definitely look through that. Okay, so after using this watch for a few weeks now, I have some liked and I have some dislikes. So let's jump in and cover those. Okay, we'll start with the things I didn't like that much about the Active 2. With 2 buttons, you kind of need to use the touchscreen for a lot of things, including during your activities, during workouts. To start or stop activities, you're using the touchscreen. I much prefer being able to rely on button presses if I'm trying to time activities precisely, or if my hands are all dirty and gross, so I'm lifting in my dingy garage and I don't want to get everything all smudged up. I think the battery life is a bit lighter than I would hope. I know for a watch of this size and thickness, 4 days is pretty much average. Maybe it only sticks out to me because they advertised 5, but I never really got there, which doesn't happen too frequently in my testing, but there it is. Now, I mentioned this earlier, but I kind of wish the bezel had a little bit of protrusion, although I acknowledge that would mean a flat screen and a much different look and dimension to the watch, which may not work for the overall design aesthetic, but again, something I personally didn't like, just because I worry I'm going to scuff up the lens. Okay, now moving on to likes. I really enjoy the size, the weight, and how casual the Active 2 can look. While I wish I was a pro athlete that could work out all day long, the reality is I am a father with a full-time job, and sometimes a casual looking watch just looks better. With all the reviews I do on this channel, I'm always wearing different watches, and 9 times out of 10 they go unnoticed. I'm swapping watches all over, no one notices or cares. But I kid you not, the first day I had this on my wrist, my neighbor complimented me on it. He said it looked sleek, and he asked if this was the new Garmin. And I'm sorry, Amazfit, but to people that don't follow this sort of thing, anything that's a sports watch is a Garmin. But point is, he thought it looked really cool. Now, with Zepp OS, I really like the amount of functionality built into the Zepp Flow AI. I don't want to always be fiddling with my watch, so being able to just kind of dictate replies, take calls, ask search questions of the AI, or change watch settings all with my voice is pretty cool. One of the more important things, I think the sports performance of the watch and just the sensors is fantastic for the vast majority of people that are looking to just be active too. See what I did there? The sensors performed great, and sure, maybe other watches that are 10 times more expensive than this watch have additional sensors or features, but are they actually 10 times better than this one? I don't think so. So that leads me to my biggest like of the Active 2, the value. You get to have a very capable fitness and sports watch with smart features that are actually decently smart, an okay battery life, and an actual sapphire lens, all for $130. It's just an unbelievably good deal. Right now, I can't think of another offering on the market that can match this watch in just overall value. Okay, so let's wrap this up. I think Amazfit continues to put out hardware that challenges the rest of the market to catch up to them in value and features at whatever price point they're hitting. The Amazfit Active 2 leads the pack in that regard. If you're a fitness and budget conscious person looking for a capable sports watch, then I think the Active 2 needs to be at the top of your list. Is it possible to get higher end hardware for triple, quadruple, or even up to 10 times the price? Sure it is. But if you're balling on a budget, then the Active 2 will get you headed in the right direction with a slew of health and fitness features that are normally reserved for watches multiple times more expensive than this watch. So what do you think? Does the Active 2 check the right boxes for you? Have you picked your jaw up off the floor after you found out the hardware package and the sensor performance of this watch and it's all for $130? Let me know in the comments, and as always, I'm Dave and this is Dave Does Fitness. Have an awesome day and stay fit.